Hi, thank you for joining me today. Today we are going to talk about the audiovisual department. My name is Johan, and I just want to start off with AV is complex. It is very, very complex. The reason why I say this is because there's no real standard. There's no standard where they say we're only going to use this one cable, or we're only using one codec, or we're only using one type of resolution. There's so many different resolutions, so many different codecs and different cables, and each cable can only handle certain resolutions. So all of these things play a role, and everything needs to be compliant with one another. And if a person make one change in a whole system, it has a ripple effect, and it can change everything. Say, for instance, you say, I want to change my screen to a 4K screen. So if you want to do that, that will have a ripple effect on all your equipment. It will have an effect on your cabling. It will have an effect on your switches, everything. So you need to know what you are doing. So say, for instance, also you just take HDCP. 4K runs on HDCP 2.2 and HD runs on HDCP 1.4. HDCP is a codec protector, so it protects the signal so that people can't really copy it. But if you run one piece of equipment and that runs on HDCP 2.2 and the other one is on HDCP 1.4, they will not talk to one another. So you need to know what you are doing or what changes you are making in your system. But most of all, AV can be such an amazing tool in the church. People do struggle to concentrate, and AV can just bring that other aspect into a sermon to keep people interested in the sermon. So the more you use multimedia like presentations, slideshows, or you use videos just to keep the people interested in the sermon, that will definitely advance the kingdom of God. And that will help the senior pastor to just bring across his sermon so much better. Audio-visual does play a big role. Like I said, sound is the foundation. You need sound. You can't do anything without sound. Lighting creates the atmosphere and the mood, and AV is there for the experience. So AV does keep people more intrigued into the sermon. So I would like to just spend the next few or talk to you about the next few modules. So the first thing what I would like to discuss with you is signal and resolutions. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Displays, different displays, what you've got, switching gear, playback, and cameras. And then lastly, I would like to talk a little bit about content creation. How important is content creation in the church? And we're going to discuss these modules now, and I really hope this is going to enlighten you and help you a little bit more with the video department. If we talk about signal and resolutions, I always say signal is like a river. It comes from somewhere, it goes somewhere, and it needs to go out into the sea, if we can say that. And your switcher determines where the signal is going. So all your sources will be the river flowing into your switcher, and then your switcher will determine which way your signal needs to be split and which way the river needs to flow, if I can use that analogy. But if we say, what signal do I need to use? SD, HD, 4K, what's the difference? So first of all, SD is still very, very old technology. That's still analog days, that most of the millennials, they won't even know what it is. So that was still with those old CRT TVs, the 4x3s. If you're still using that, then please just throw it away. That's old technology. We don't really want to use that. It's really, really old, and you can't do much with it. So in 1998, full HD was brought to the industry. And if we look at HD, what does full HD means? The resolution on full HD is 1920 by 1080. So what does that mean? If you look and you see 1920 by 1080, 1920 means your horizontal pixel count is 1920 pixels, and then your vertical pixel count is 1080 pixels. And if you take 1920 divided by 1080, you get an aspect ratio of 1.77778. And that is your aspect ratio. So this is HD. And we do use HD. I think HD is still going to be around for a while. But 4K is coming to the forefront, and it is coming pretty strong. But if we talk about 4K, so 4K, you've got UHD 4K and DCI 4K. UHD 4K is 3840 by 2160, and DCI 4K is 4096 by 2160. So DCI is more your cinema standard, and UHD is more your commercial standard. So most of the time we will use the commercial standard, the UHD, which is a 16 by 9. But what's the difference between 4K and HD? So obviously the color space and the chroma sample, those things are part of the EDIT. So EDIT is stands for Extended Display Identity Data, or Identify Data. So the EDIT is everything with the resolution. It's got the aspect ratio or the resolution in it. It's got the color space. All those data is in the EDIT. But let's look at the resolution. Pretty much that's what makes 4K and HD different. So 4K is 3840 by 2160 on UHD. So that means if you look, your horizontal pixel count will be 3840 and your vertical pixel count will be 2160. So 4K is actually 4 times the pixels of HD. So you have a lot more pixels. That's what makes 4K more relevant, if I can say that. But if you are in a church, will 4K make such a huge difference? Do you want to stream 4K? Because obviously the data is also so much more. People have to stream this, so they need to have very fast internet lines. So that's also a thing what you need to think of. Can South Africa really accommodate 4K? I know we are running fibers. Fibers is coming to the forefront very, very strong. Lately, everybody's installing fiber, so yes, that will. But if you want to reach the lower income community, then they're not going to stream 4K. But it's always good to have that option. And also, if you want to do 4K, if people are going to sit 10 meters away from the screen and you've got a 4-meter screen, they're not going to see the difference. I will definitely say when you are going like a 10, 12 meter screens, then yes, then you will need 4K and with LEDs as well. But we'll talk about that now. But 4K, yes, there is a huge market for 4K. But if you want to do 4K, it's not only one component what you need to upgrade to 4K. It doesn't help you've got a 4K projector, but all your other gear is not 4K compliant. So your cables need to be able to handle 4K. Your switches need to be able to push out 4K, and then your playback. So everything needs to run 4K if you want true 4K. Even your cameras needs to go 4K. So this is something what you need to look at. Do you want to upgrade everything to 4K? Because it's it's going to be expensive. That I can promise you. But I also feel HD is going to be around for a while. So if you have a budget to go 4K, then please do. The quality is phenomenal, but I do think everything is not 100% there. We're almost 100% there. I still have some issues with 4K sometimes, because a lot of people will say, oh, this is 4K, then it's 4K at 30 hertz or something like that. And you want to run the full 4K at 60, or in South Africa, we run at 50 hertz because of power. So 4K, yes, if you can, but HD, I would definitely say it's still relevant. So you don't need to upgrade right now with 4K, and don't let everybody tell you have to go 4K. You need to see why and what you need, and what is your requirements before you go 4K. If we talk about cabling, let's talk about coaxial cable. So you've got SD, you've got HD SDI, 3G, 6G, and 12G. So with this, there's all different types of cables where you can run different resolutions because it can handle different bandwidth. So if you round it off, like a 3G can run 3 gigabits per second, 6G 6 gigabits per second, 12G 12 gigabits per second, but 3G is pretty much like 2.97, and when HDSDI is about 1.5 gigabits per second. And coaxial you can only run for 100 meter. That's its maximum level or length what you can run. And if you run 100 meters on HDSDI, I will say you can run 1080p at 25. If you go to 50, it might drop out sometimes because of the bandwidth. Or if you want to run 50, you can run 1080i. I would carry the signal. If we look at DVI, so you have DVI-A, DVI-D, and DVI-I. DVI-A is for analog, DVI-D is digital, DVI-I is both. And it's the pin configuration, the way they have labeled it. So the DVI-A has those 4 pins, those 4 extra pins. DVI-D doesn't have those 4 pins, and then DVI-I has the 4 pins. And then you also have single link and dual link. Dual link has single link have the gap inside the DVI, and the dual link doesn't, so it has more pins. So DVI single link can run 1920 by 1200. That's its max resolution. And DVI-D or DVI-D dual link can run 2560 by 1600 because of the more pins, so you can have more data carrying. But also with DVI, you can't really run a very long cable. You can do about 15 meters max. I have done 15 meters, but I do recommend only going 5 meters. If you run full resolution, then I would say 5-7 meters. Don't push it more than that. But if I have run 15 meters with it, but then on the DVI dual links, I have ran with 1920 by 1080, which is not the full bandwidth what I used. And then if we look at HDMIs, HDMI can run different resolution. A person can look at HDMI, but there's so many different HDMIs. You get HDMI 1, HDMI 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, and HDMI 2, and HDMI 2.1 has just been released. So there's different HDMIs. HDMI 1.3 is pretty much HD. HDMI 1.4 can do 4K at 30 Hertz. HDMI 2 does 4K at 60 Hertz max. So, and then HDMI 2.1 is now the big one, which is very, very new, but that's 8K, but I don't think we're going to touch it very, very soon. And also HDMI, you can't really run it very long. Distances, they do recommend a 10-15 meter run, nothing more than that on HDMI, because obviously it also does copper. And then the other cable what we do use in AV is DisplayPort. So DisplayPort also, you've got DP 1.1, DP 1.2, DP 1.3, and DP 1.4. So DP 1.1 can do 4K at 30 Hertz, DP 1.2 does 4K at 60 Hertz, and then 1.3 and 1.4 goes up to 8K. But also the problem with DP, also you can't do very long runs. You're also limited to very short runs with DisplayPort. So if you need to do long runs, so how do you do long runs? So the best way, what I would suggest, is definitely to go fiber multi-mode. With fiber multi-mode, you can do 300 meters, but then you just need a fiber extender. So your fiber extender is either a DVI, HDMI, or a DP little dongle what you can buy. There's lots of different makes, but the 4K is still a tricky one. There's not a lot of 4K extenders. So always they do sell, they say it's a 4K extender, but the dongle can only do UHD at 30 Hertz. So always look at that. When you buy a fiber extender, please make sure that you get a fiber extender what can do DCI at 60 Hertz. I had lots of fights with people because they always say it is 4K, and then it's not 100% 4K. It's almost like in the old days when we said it's HD ready. So I would say when you buy the extender, just make sure it is DCI, which is 4096 by 2160 at 60 hertz. And also look at your chroma sampling, that it's 442 or 444. Some of them do sell them, and then it's 420, which might give you a little bit of problem with your color mixing when you don't get that rich and nice colors out of the dongles. So when we talk about displays are anything what will project or show your content, if that's a projector, a LED screen, or even LCD TV or plasma screen or whatever. So whatever is going to show your content, that we refer to as displays. So if we look at projectors, so you get so many different projectors, and projectors are going through a stage now where new technology is really, really coming to the forefront. But first of all, with projectors, you've got DLP projectors or LCD projectors. A DLP projector, you've got a 1-chip or 3-chip projector, which works with mirrors. So it's a little chip what's work with mirrors that will give you your image eventually. And the LCD works with LCD panels. So that's the difference. And then now also we are used to the lamps. The projector is what works with lamps, but the laser is coming now more to the forefront. So laser is really, really taking over the market due to the fact that you don't really have to replace the laser as often. A laser they reckon it can last for about 20,000 hours, where a projector's lamp can only last, if it differs. So, but average, you can say about between 1,200 hours to 2,000 hours. Depends on the lumens of a projector. But if you use a xenon lamp, they last about 700 hours. So that's a give and take with projectors. And but when we look at projectors, you can do a lot with projectors. They are really, really great. It's very versatile. You've got different lumences. So there's a lot what you can do. And the one thing with projectors, you can really map objects. You can do blends. A blend is when you bring two projectors together and you make one wide screen. That's also really, really amazing. And if you look at makes, I would definitely say Barco, Christie, Panasonic. They are really, really great projectors. Epson is also there, and they've got the 3-chip LCD projectors. They do not make any DLP projectors. The one thing is always a concern for me on the LCD projectors, when the lamps when we still use the lamps, after a while the lamps burn the LCD panel, and then the corner starts getting purple, and you have to replace the LCD panel. With laser, they have told me it won't happen due to it doesn't produce so much heat, but unfortunately you will only be able to see that over time. But I do have to say, I've seen these Epson projectors, and they are pretty amazing. The colors are really, really great. I love a Christie's, I love a Barco's, but you need to look at price wise and how long you want to use your projectors. So projectors as well. This is why I said in venues, you need to try to eliminate ambient light, because ambient light is going to affect your projection, it's going to affect your lighting, it's going to affect everything. So you need to try to minimize your ambient light. If you don't have any ambient light, then you can go to a blackout whenever you need to, and this is what you need, that control. You need that control in your venue. So ambient light is actually pretty much an enemy to projection and lighting. But otherwise, projection still has a place in the market, but LED is picking up and it is taking over a little bit. LED panels are great. More and more clients are requesting to do LED. One thing is because it creates a great background and you don't have any shadows anymore. You don't have to worry about shadows. You don't have to worry about light spilling onto the screens. So LED for backgrounds are brilliant. And then to match it, when you do side screens also as LEDs. But the nice thing about LED is you can make it any size. You can create your wall in any configuration. You can do whatever you want to. So usually, not all of them. Most of the panels comes in a 500 by 500 dimension, but they do differ. So I'm just saying this is like a general measurement is 500 by 500. Say, for instance, you have a 500 by 500 panel and you've got a 2.9 mil. So then the pixel count on that will be 168 pixels across, 168 pixels up. And this is where signal needs signal plays a big role, because if you're gonna do a LED wall of 9 meters, so that's going to be 18 panels. You're going to run 18 panels across. That's going to give you a resolution of 3024 pixels across and 1680 pixels. So you can see 3024 pixels across. So now you can't use an HD signal anymore. You will have to use 4K, or you have to use 4 HD signals and stitch it together. This is where the problem comes in. So if you have an LED wall behind on stage and your pixel count is 3024, so now your switcher needs to be able to push out 4K. So that's already changing the whole signal flow on your diagram. So now you have to upgrade already your cables that it can handle 4K, where you will have to run either a 12G coaxial, or you have to run fiber with your fiber extenders. So that already plays a role. And then your switcher needs to be able to push out 4K. But if you go and you change your 2.9 to 4.8, so it's 18 panels, just that little change, then your resolution will be 1872 by 1040. So now you can run only a 1 HD. And I can be honest with you, we have done Miss SA, and we had these pillars all over the whole stage. And one pillar was 2.9, the next one was 4.8, 2.9, 4.8, 2.9, 4.8. And if you stood in the crowd, you could not see the difference between the 2.9 and the 4.8. It was very hard to see the difference if you sit in the crowd. When you look on a camera, then you can see a difference, because obviously the camera zoomed in and is a lot closer, but still it's not that visible. Not any person will see it. If you focus on it, then you will see it. But if this is where you need to be very careful in what you get. So lately there is a 0.9 mil LED out. So what does it mean at 0.9 mil? So what it actually means is for every 0.9 millimeters you get one LED. So on a 2.9 millimeter, for every 2.9 millimeter you have an LED. But on a 0.9 mil LED, and you're going to build a 9 meter screen, you're going to run quickly into problems, lots of problems, because you're going to run out of pixels, and the gear what you're going to have to buy is going to be insane. You're going to pay far over $1 million just for your switching gear. And this is why I say you need to make sure you know what you want to buy and where you're going. So this is where it starts with your displays. Know what you want to put up. Now know which screens you want to put up. And then you can start planning your screens. If you say, okay, I need one 4K and I need HDs, then you know, okay, this is my requirement. And then you can work your way back. And then you can see on your switches, what do you need to buy? It's very important to know where you want to go. And the LED, especially if you start building LED, you can quickly run out of pixels. And this is why plan. If you have to, if you can, draw a diagram. A schematic, a AV schematic. I always draw AV schematics for my shows, that I know exactly what do I need to do, how I need to do it, and if any changes come, then I have to replan and replot and make sure everything what I do is going to work. Because you can't be, for us, we can't go onto site and every time, oh, okay, this is not going to work, this is not going to work, because sometimes we are not close to the office, and then we can't just quickly fly something down or quickly drive or anything like that. So you need to plan, and you will know what you need to know your backbone of your system, and if you have your backbone of your system, then you can build onto that. If we talk about switching gear, A switcher is very, very important for me, because your switcher, you will build all your presets on in your switcher. You do get programs what does everything, but I do not really like it because, say for instance, that one piece of kit falls over, then you have no backup. And your switches are hardware based, which really it's very, very stable. And when you bring in all your sources, you've got lots of different sources. If it's laptops, if it's cameras, your lyrics, we'll talk about playback. But you bring all your sources into your switcher, and then you will build your presets, and then those presets you will send out to all your displays. And above your switcher, you are going to need a vision mixer, which is going to mix the cameras. Don't put your cameras also into your switcher because it's just too much for one person to handle, because you need to be focused. And also the switchers doesn't always have all the capabilities of a vision mixer, because you need to be able to control your colors and do color corrections and things like that, maybe sometimes on the fly. And also, say for instance, with your switches, what I really do like, what you get, it's barcode and the analog way. Those two makes, I definitely would advise those two. They are really, really great. And they can meet your needs wherever you are. Say for instance, you only need one output, they have a switcher for that. If you need 5 outputs, they've got switches for that. If you need 20 outputs, then they can build a system like that as well. So they can meet your requirements, because obviously you know now what displays you're going to use and how many outputs you're going to need. So that's also very important, that you know what you want to do, where you want to go. And also with your vision mixes, there are a few vision mixes out there what I really, really do like. Blackmagic's got some. The TriCaster, it's a vision mixer and a media server. Sony and Panasonic, they also do have some nice vision mixes. But please, you need to test these vision mixes, because you don't want any frame delays. You need to make sure your frame delay are minimal, because every piece of equipment what you're going to put in the chain is going to add a frame delay, and you want to minimize that as much as possible, because at the end of the day, if you don't keep a close eye on your frame delays, when you're going to display it, then your lip sync is going to be so far out and you're going to struggle to fix it. So always try to put as little as possible equipment in your signal flow. And also with your signal as well, if I can say this quickly, don't change the resolution the whole time. If you come in, say for instance, from a camera 1080i, and then you change it from 1080i to 25p, and then you change it back to 1080i, every time there's a conversion, and you don't want to do that. Choose a resolution and stick with that resolution. That's very, very important. And this is that your switches, everything is running the same resolution. Very, very, very important. And just a quick thing also on the TriCaster, like I said, it is a switcher, it's a media server. You can do lower thirds with it. Lots of OB vans use it, but it can't do lyrics. So that's a little bit of a downfall, but otherwise it's brilliant. It's really, really great, and it can control cameras as well. So it's really, really cool. The TriCaster, a little bit on the expensive side, but if you have a budget, you can look into that. If we talk about playback is what we call anything what will playback presentations, slides, your videos, your lyrics, anything what produces content. That's your playback. And in churches, ProPresenter is pretty much a very, very good program. Lots of churches are using ProPresenter. It can do multiple things for you. It can do your video playback. It can do lyrics. It can do your announcement slides. So it can build slideshows. So that's a really, really good program. And most churches do use ProPresenter. There's also a program, Faith Life Proclaim, which is also a very good program. The only thing about this one, it is a monthly subscription, which could be a little bit of a letdown. ProPresenter is a once-off payment, so you'll buy it and then it belongs to you. You've got the license and then you can use it. With these programs also, it has the option to do multiple outputs, but this is going to be the hardware dependent. So if your computer, the graphics card, will allow you to do more outputs than one, then you will be able to do like multiple outputs, 2 or 3 outputs, depends on your graphics card, what graphics card you use. And obviously also in these computers, you can put capture cards where you can capture images, but with capture cards, always you need to be very, very careful which capture card you buy, due to the fact that it does add latency. It does add latency to your camera. So just be very, very careful when you buy capture cards. You're also going to need something like Keynote or PowerPoint, because you might have guest speakers who come in and then they want to present. If the venue is, or the AV department is outside your church or in a separate room, you might need to run cables to the stage or to front of house with a clicker that they can drive their own presentations. If you have a guest speaker, because obviously you do not know the way he's going to present, so you can't, or he needs to send somebody who's going to do his presentations for him. So that's also an option what you can have. Just always keep it in mind, maybe just run a cable to stage or a cable to front of house if the AV studio is outside of the church. That's very, very important to remember that. And then if we talk about media servers I really do like media servers. They are very, very handy. It is really a nice to have. The basic media server, what most churches do use, is Resolume. So with media servers, what you can do is you can play back graphics and you can manipulate the graphics. A lot of VJs are using media servers when they do rock concerts or anything like that. When we use VJs and they do all the visuals on the screens. With media servers as well, you can map objects, which is really, really cool. I really love doing that. You can project on different shapes and sizes. You can create masks in media servers. There are a lot of media servers out there. I know Resolume is one. We've got Chaos. There is the Hippo. The Hippo is really, really great. Some people do use VDMX with MadMapper. So there are different programs out there what you can use for media servers, and they do come in handy, especially when you need to do very creative things. Then you can really manipulate your video with these media servers, and they really, really can create just that extra something in your production if you need to have a production like a Christmas production or your Passover production. So media servers do come in handy, but that can be an add-on later on in your system. It's not a really have to. There's also a program called Watchout, which is also great. It's a timeline-based program. So with media servers, you can change on the fly. With Watchout, you can't. But if you have a whole production and you want to program the show, Watchout is really, really great. You program it on a timeline, and then as soon as the show starts, you run time code, and it's brilliant. It's brilliant. We use Watchout on most of our shows, and it really works very, very, very well. If we talk about cameras, it's very difficult to talk about cameras. Because, well, what do you need to go with HD, 4K? Do you need fixed lenses? Do you need interchangeable lenses? So there's lots of options, but I would definitely say with your cameras, your fixed lens cameras, usually they times 20 zoom. So you need to know if your church is will accommodate that. If not, then you'll have to get a body plus interchangeable lens that you can zoom in very, very close to your senior pastor. So that's very, very important. But if we talk about 4K cameras and HD cameras, like I said, I do believe HD is still going to be around for a while. But 4K, if you go with a 4K camera, then you need to have 4K switches, you need to have 4K vision mixers, all your cables needs to be 4K. So everything needs to be upgraded to 4K. If you want to go with 4K, great. HD, I do believe HD is still sufficient if you have to, but cameras are pretty expensive. They are a little bit pricey, but if you buy a camera, just make sure you get a camera with a HD SDI output at least. If it's 4K, then 12G is great, because like I say, HDMI, you can't run very long. You can't do long runs with HDMI, so you'll have to put in a converter. Then obviously that adds like 1 or 2 frames. So every time you add something in the chain, you're going to add frames. So try to stay away from converting the signals. Try to stick with one single signal. If it's HDSDI output, you keep it HDSDI right through to your vision mixer. From your vision mixer, you go HDSDI to your switcher. So always try to keep your signal. Don't try to convert your signal too much. There's also now your robotic cameras, the PTZ cameras. They are network-based cameras, which are great. What's nice about them, you don't need to have a camera operator behind them, because you operate them with a remote. The TriCaster can operate them, like I said earlier on, but the PTZs, they are really, really cool. So I would maybe say, if you have budget for it, maybe get like 3 PTZ cameras and then maybe 2 man cameras. So your PTZ cameras can be lockdowns with presets. Then you can have one on a wide, on a medium, and a close-up, and you can switch between them, and you can create presets for them as well. And then you've got just your 2 operated cameras, or even 1 if you have to. But I would say that's a good way to go, that you have more cameras but you don't have so many operators, because that will help obviously with crew as well eventually, because crew is pretty much a problem, but we'll talk about that in the next session. I'm always worried about crew, because you need to know, your crew needs to know what they are doing. So on the camera side, you need to determine what you're going to produce. If you shoot in 4K, you record in 4K. Yes, in post it's going to be nice. You've got definitely the pixels then, but this file sizes then as well. You need to have enough storage room for all your file sizes, because it's going to be big files. 4K is really, really big files. So just take that in consideration. AV is complex, and it's difficult to do some of the things. It's not always nice. It's long hours. It's lots of planning, and you need to know what you're doing, and you need to plan thoroughly. But if you do a building map with multiple projectors, you map the building, you line it up perfect. Everything is just perfect, and the content is not good. Then it doesn't matter how many hours you spend and how great it is, it's not going to look good, because the content is not right. So content, we have a saying where we always say content is king, because the content is very, very, very important. The content will determine everything. That's your final product. And that is the biggest fight in our industry. It's content. Content is always a problem. I'm very, very thrilled if the content is right, but that comes down to planning. If we get involved with the content from the beginning, then that helps, because then the pixel sizes will be right, everything will be right. But content is king, and content needs to be right, and content will determine the effect what it has. So you need to invest in a studio. And it doesn't need to be a big studio. When you start off, you need pretty much a pretty decent laptop or a Mac, and then you need editing software to produce the content. And also, there are lots of websites where you can get templates and graphics, and you can download a lot of content off websites. You pay a subscription to the host, and then they give you a library full of content where you have access to. So that really does help if you can do that. Some nice programs, what you have for content creation, most people will know FCP, Final Cut Pro, Adobe's got also a lot of stuff. Then we've got Sony Vegas and also DaVinci. Those are, I would say, the most popular ones. There will be other ones, but the nice thing about Adobe, if it okay, it's first it's a subscription, so you have to pay it every month, which is a little bit of a downer, but you get the whole package. So you with Adobe you get graphic designing and everything. So with Final Cut Pro you buy it once, it's yours, and then you have to go buy another program compressor, and you need to go buy something like Corel Draw or some graphic program as well on top of that. So if you buy all of those programs, it's a once-off fee and then it's yours. With Adobe, unfortunately, it's never yours. You always have to pay a monthly subscription. So there's pros and cons, but like I say, content is very, very, very important. And if you have a content creator, you need to have at least one person to work with the senior pastor with his sermon, and then they can get together and they can just make that sermon into such a presentation that it really, really will have the maximum effect on the congregation. I definitely would suggest that you need to invest in a studio. It's very, very important because really it's going to just take your church to the next level, which is really, really great. But this is pretty much what I wanted to talk to you about in the AV department. I know I have thrown around a lot of figures and things. I hope I didn't confuse you too much. But if there's any questions or anything like that, please email me at johan@blueye.co.za or leave a comment, like, share, please. And who knows, God is amazing. He does amazing things through our lives, and may God really bless you, and may He take your ministry from glory to glory.